Hey guys, so my name's Claire, and I'm sure Bewillis has already told you about me before this video starts. And I know it's weird to get like a talk through a video, but anyway, my name's Claire, and I went to St Ignatius from 2011 to the end of 2014. And now I'm in my first year of university at the University of Adelaide, so that's why you get me in video form. And I'm studying animal science, and I'm actually hoping to transfer across next year to vet medicine so I can work as an elephant reproductive specialist. And you can laugh now, but yes, that involves getting elephants pregnant. So my conservation work really started in year 7, way back in 2011. So I'd always loved animals in the zoo, and in fact, I'll show you a photo now of me at the zoo when I was about 3 years old, dressed in some really cute yellow overalls, having a look at the elephants. And so I used to go to the zoo weekly, but my conservation work really started when I was in year 7, so 2011. I was accepted as a Joey ambassador for Australia Zoo, so there's only 25 of them in the world. And basically that role involved a lot of fundraising. And so I managed to raise $1,500 for the Australia Zoo in 2 months, which was pretty cool. I then went on to volunteering at Leopold Wildlife Shelter, which is no longer running, unfortunately. And in year 9, I started this really cool program at the zoo. So it was called Youth at the Zoo. It's still running now, and if you want to join, just Google Youth at the Zoo Melbourne, because there's one in basically every zoo in Australia. And so what it is it's volunteer work at the zoo. It's also, you get learning programs in your school holidays, and you get to help out at all these different zoo events and a heap of behind the scenes encounters. Seriously, I've fed the giraffes more times than I can count now. I did some work experience at the zoo, and then, so this was all through like year 9, year 10, I did my work experience at the zoo. If you guys are interested in doing your work experience at the zoo, get some animal experience behind you and apply in August of year 9. It was awesome. I was in Oz Bush for the week, and I got to like be a zookeeper and stuff. And then at the end of year 10, I actually moved schools. So I moved from St Ignatius to a select entry school in Melbourne called the Elizabeth Blackburn School of Science. And while I was there, we did a subject called Extended Investigations, which was the best VCE subject I could have done in the whole entire world. Seriously, when you guys get up to VCE, pester them to do this subject, because you don't have to do an exam. So you have to write a 4,000-word report on something that you research, anything you want in the whole wide world. So I looked at, it's a bit of a mouthful, which major factor has the biggest influence on the behaviour of captive Asian elephants in an urban zoo environment? So to put that simply, I looked at elephant behaviour based off if they had food, if the keepers were around, and where they were. And so it was really great, because I got to go to the zoo on a Wednesday and a Saturday and watch elephants for 3 months. And as a part of my research, I was actually fortunate enough to deliver what I'd found in my study to Professor Elizabeth Blackburn, the lady who my school was named after, and Australia's first Nobel Prize winner. So in 2016, I also started working for the Jane Goodall Institute Australia on their first National Youth Leadership Council. And so as a part of that, I organised events. I don't even know if this is still up, but we came down to St Ignatius and organised a mural for Peace Day. And then last year, as a part of Jane Goodall, I actually got to help coordinate Jane's tour. So there was an event for selected schools at Ceres Conservation Park, and Jane talked to about 20 students, and I helped coordinate that. And I helped out on a tour with ticketing and merchandise, and it was really cool. So I had 2 opportunities to chat with Jane herself. So for those of you who don't know who Jane Goodall is, so she's 84 now, but when she was 25, she decided that she wanted to go and research chimpanzees with no uni degree because her family couldn't afford it. So she moved to the jungle with a little bit of funding from a guy called Lewis Leakey, and no scientific background, just a love of animals. And she discovered that chimpanzees use tools, which actually led to a redefinition of how we define humans. So she's like a world changer, and she did it with no uni degree. And now she goes around the world. She only stays in a country for 2 weeks at most, and she's 84 years old, spreading her conservation message and why it's important. And I was really lucky to be able to work as a part of that. I also did some work with Edge Pledge, which is an online fundraising platform. So you pick 3 challenges, and then the one that gets the most money donated towards it, you do. So I've dyed my hair pink, and I had to take a photo of an animal every day for a month, which was really hard work. But I've got friends that have had tattoos through that, others that have had to not talk for a week. Someone I know had to go skydiving. So it's really cool, and they've just introduced this program, Edge Pledge Schools, and so if you do a challenge, half the money goes to the animal of your choice, and the other half of the money goes to your school. But now I'm in Adelaide, so I'm not doing youth at the zoo anymore. I'm not doing Jane Goodall anymore. I'm just focusing on my studies so I can get into vet next year. I'm hoping to pick up some volunteer work soon. I've applied to a couple of places, but with moving. The other really exciting thing is I am now the CEO of the Australian Youth Conservation Task Force. So it's a youth movement hoping to focus on issues that young people feel are important within the conservation sector, and we're hoping to be a youth voice. This year, we've done a soft launch. So we're doing our big launch next year, but this year we are just working with the ATS at Melbourne to try and see how this program fits for them and how we should change it and tweak it before we launch next year. But that's my big project at the moment. Okay, so Melbourne Zoo, where you guys are visiting, is actually the oldest zoo in Australia, and because of that it's got a pretty rich history. So nowadays the zoo is all about conservation of species, education, and animal welfare. So the zoo try to maintain 5 animal welfare freedoms, so the freedom from hunger, freedom from thirst, the freedom to express natural behaviour. Anyway, you get the idea. It's all about for the animals. And so to do that, the zoo actually has an animal welfare specialist that looks after their behaviours and looks after their well-being. Zoos Victoria is also committed to making sure that 21 of the most endangered species in Victoria and Australia don't go extinct. So that's something pretty cool. But in the past, the zoo was all about entertainment. So when you walk down the main drive in the middle of Melbourne Zoo, you'll see this enclosure, and it's got the word change written in it. So that enclosure used to house 5 orangutans, as is, without the extra fence that's there now. And so one of the most famous orangutans in there was actually Molly. And Molly was pretty cool. So she used to take people's lunch. She used to take their fish and chips that they'd bring to the zoo. And she also learnt to smoke. And so, because she was quite addicted to the cigarette, keepers actually decided to give her her own lighter and her own packs of ciggies. But Molly set her enclosure on fire when it was made of wood, and so then they rebuilt it pretty quickly out of metal. But kind of having a look at that and just having a think about that shows you how far zoos have come from, 155 years ago to now. So they also used to do things like elephant rides, and there's talk even now about how Melbourne Zoo might not be suitable for elephants, and so they're going to send them to Werribee. And I love the world of the zoo because it's evolving and changing continually, and the more we learn about animals, the more we can change and alter it. And Melbourne Zoo is not the only one in Australia with history either, and I'm actually going to talk about some of the other animals around Australia that are pretty cool as we keep going through this. But now I'm going to tell you about some of my favourite walks at Melbourne Zoo. Okay, before we get started on this bit, I think the most important thing for you guys to know is that you are not going to get through the whole zoo in the time that you've got there. I'm sorry, I had to put it out there. So there are 5,200 different individual animals at Melbourne Zoo. So if you think you're going to see all of that in a day, it's crazy. The average zoo visitor spends 20 seconds at exhibit, which is enough time to look for an animal and then say, see you later. But the thing is, the more time you spend with an animal, the more you get to know their personality and traits. So I spend a lot of time with the elephants. I know them inside out and back to front. I know that I hate Mecapar No, I do like Mechapa. I know that I hate Kulab because Kulab's just annoying and she just stands on fences and she's quite bossy and she doesn't like my favourite elephant, Marley. But the only reason I have that knowledge is because I spent so much time watching them. So what I urge you guys to do is to like slow down at the zoo. Take a breath. I know you're all going for the food. Go and buy your overpriced chips. Slow down and then watch an animal. Watch their behaviours and see how it differs to other animals in the enclosures. Really good one to watch would be Kanzi. She's the baby gorilla. Just because she's cute. Same as the orangutans are really cool to watch. And if you take your overpriced hot chips to the orangutans, I can nearly guarantee, they will mimic you eating them. But they're not the first walk I'm going to talk about today, surprisingly. The first walk I'm going to talk about today, you guys are pretty lucky, so you will be the first group at St Ignatius gets to do this walk, and it's actually the Carnivores Trail. And oh my god, I am in love with this Carnivores Trail. So, after you get past the lions and the hunting dogs, they've got 3 new exhibits. They've got a Sumatran tiger one, and that's got Indra in it. And Indra's there because she was over in the other tiger exhibit near the elephants. But Indra didn't get along with her mum, and they used to fight through the fence, so they moved her over here. And there's also 2 snow leopards on display and 2 out the back. So they're hoping for little snow leopard babies in a minute. But so each of these enclosures is the size of the first elephant enclosure you see with the big pool and the last elephant enclosure you see. But instead of housing like up to 6 elephants, it has 1 big cat in it, which also makes it hard to see. I know friends that have had bets on like who could see it first, and it's taken them a couple of weeks to see a snow leopard. But the good thing is, the snow leopard in the first exhibit's getting really used to it, so you should be able to find her fine. So these exhibits, so I'm about to get a bit nerdy here. They have all these different really cool features to like mimic what the animal's natural environment was, and they're actually made of 90% of the recycled old exhibits. So the first snow leopard exhibit has these holes in the walls, and at different times of day keepers can program food to just like shoot out of them. And it also has a cool rock, so it's got water that flows underneath it to keep it cool, because snow leopards, name suggests they're from the snow, and the name would suggest right. And, you know, a 40-degree day in Australia is not quite going to mimic that. They've also put a wire in across the top of the tiger exhibit, or they're planning on putting a wire in across the top of the tiger exhibit. And they're going to be able to put food on there and just send it flying at her at different speeds, so she has to like jump and fight for it. So these exhibits are really cool, not only because like the animals are cool, and like snow leopards are so rare, they don't even know how many snow leopards there are in the world, and you guys get the opportunity to see them, and you know, hopefully you will definitely see one. But the exhibit design's actually really cool, and it shows like the modern zoo evolving. And then they've also tried to incorporate like street art and be hip and cool and be Melbourne, because you know what Melbourne's like. So there's a bunch of murals like of big snow leopards, and there's this thing called Cat Alley. It's about keeping your cat indoors at night, not because of necessarily the threat they pose for wildlife, but because of the health concerns that this is for your cat letting out. Anyway, just thought I'd give you a heads up to all you like Instagrammers out there. It looks really cool on your Instagram. Also on this walk, there's lions, hunting dogs, and there's a Tasmanian devil named Lloyd, and coatis. You guys won't know what a coati is. They're weird. I don't know if they're on exhibit or not, because I haven't been to Melbourne Zoo in a while, but they moved them all in, and then the coatis decided that they really didn't feel comfortable with people being there. So then they had to shut off half the walk so the coatis could get comfortable with people. So hopefully it's all open now. But anyway, this Tasmanian devil, they've got one of them. He's got access to 2 exhibits, and his name's Lloyd. If you can't see him, have a look in his den. If you still can't see him, yell Lloyd really loudly, and he comes running. He thinks you're a keeper, he thinks you got food. So I can basically guarantee you'll see that Tassie devil if you yell Lloyd. Just like, keep it on the down low though, because I'll probably get in trouble for telling you. Alright, so the next walk I definitely would try and get in your day at the zoo is the Treetop Apes and Monkeys walk. I think that's its official name still. Anyway, it starts at this big woven basket on the main drive, so the main road down the middle of the zoo, near where the old exhibit is. It says change. And just for the record, I helped weave that basket, and that's my claim to fame. And you actually go through that basket, and there's this little voiceover that plays, and then you walk through it, and you're in the lemur exhibit. So you're not on the outside looking at the lemurs, you're in there with them. So I recommend doing that one early on in the day, just because the lemurs are still really active, jumping from tree to tree and stuff. And so at this point, I always get year 8s and year 9s freaking out, going, oh my god, I can touch a lemur. No, you can't. Not unless the lemur touches you. So aim for it that way. Then it weaves around. Oh, also, there's actually 11 lemurs in there. See if you can count them all. All boys, because girl lemurs tend to fight, so I guess it's a bit like the girls at school. Boys, you get to laugh now. So then the path weaves around a bit. You go out another basket. I didn't weave that one. And then you see the gorilla enclosure, which I think is pretty impressive. And it was actually built in the 1990s, which is quite cool and quite old. And you will see little itty bitty Kanzi in there. She's not so little and itty bitty anymore, but she is adorable. So she's nearly 3, which makes me feel really old. And so she lives in there in the little gorilla group. So the leader, the silverback, is Atana, and he actually killed another gorilla on exhibit in front of a school group because he got so protective over itty bitty baby Kanzi. And then Kanzi's mum's Kimia is in there. She always walks around with her hands on her ears like this. And they've done studies and they've found that gorillas don't really like people, so they think it might be a reaction to that, but they're not sure. And then she's in there with a couple other gorillas as well. But unlike the majority of gorillas which hate people, Kanzi thrives off attention. So I've been there and I've seen Kanzi run in front of a crowd and spin, 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 and then she'd look at us and then she'd give herself a little round of applause. So she's really cool to watch. Then you've got peccaroos, which are like warthogs, but they're not warthogs. And the really funny thing is that they look like a pig, but they're actually really dangerous. So the zoo's got these 3 levels of animal handling. So code green is like anyone can touch it, and you know, they're the ones that they bring out for school groups. So things like a frog. Then you got code yellow, which is like seals, so you need like 2 keepers to every seal. And then there's code red, which also correlates to code red, you're dead. So that's things that no one can go in with unless they're under anaesthetic. So things like your lions, giraffes, because a giraffe kick can kill a lion, elephants, and these pigs, because the keepers used to be allowed in with them, and then one of them bit a keeper, and they popped an artery in his leg and he had to go for surgery. So there's those, and there's the pygmy hippo Felix, which is just like a really small hippo, and he's adorable. So he's the same size as a normal hippo when they're a baby. Fun fact, his offspring Obi is at Adelaide Zoo, and Obi is sassy and I enjoy seeing Obi. Then you continue up, you actually go up a ramp, and you've got all these different monkeys up there. So the first one you'll see is Tiu. He's a gibbon, so he's not actually a monkey, he's an ape. Difference between apes and monkeys. Monkeys have a tail, apes don't. Apes are smarter. That's all you gotta know, and if you mess this up, I'm suing St. Ignatius or something. So he's quite old now. He hates anyone that wears colour purple, all boys, volunteers, and certain keepers. So as long as you don't fit any of those criteria, so girls, he will be okay with you. So he's a pretty interesting character. He's quite old now, and gibbons mate for life. So further around, there's actually another set of gibbons, 2 of them, and they're the great-granddaughter of Tiu and her partner. And then there's also spider monkeys up there, which are awesome animals. Estella, she's up there. She's a spider monkey. She was hand raised because her mum didn't want her. And you'll notice on some of the glass up here, there's actually it's one-way glass. It kind of looks like when they put an ad on the side of the bus. And that is Sally Sherwin's doing for the animals, because some of the monkeys used to get really stressed when they could see people watching them, because they all live in canopies, and you're up in the canopy on this walk, and that's their safe zone, and all of a sudden they've got something really big and really scary in their safe zone. So that curves around a bit more, and you know, that's kind of the end of that trail, but it's really cool because everyone loves a good monkey. And the big message on this walk is they're calling on you. So what happens is in Africa, in the Congo and in other parts, they actually mine where the gorillas live for different minerals that go on a mobile phone. And so basically the gorillas are losing their habitat, but not only that, it's 12, 13-year-old boys, so people that are starting year 7 that get sent out to mine, and the mines aren't safe and they die. and they use snare traps, and gorillas lose hands, and one of the gorillas they used to have at Melbourne Zoo was caught in a snare trap as a baby, and that's why she was there. And so a way to kind of fix this problem is to actually recycle your old mobile phones. It sounds so simple, but if you recycle the phone, they've got boxes at the zoo, they've got bags you can take, and St Ignatius had a box when I was there because I put it in. They get reused, they take the minerals out that they can, they extract it, they reuse the screen if possible, and then it's a brand new phone. And the bits that they can't use because they're too old, like say it's a Nokia brick, they actually send it to rangers called gorilla doctors, and then they've got them for walkie-talkies to help save the gorillas in the wild. So that's a really simple conservation action you can get out of the zoo, and you can help animals like Kanzi in the wild, just by recycling an old phone that you might not need anymore. Alright, so the last walk I want to talk about is my personal favourite, and it's the Trail of the Elephants. And being Indonesian students, if you don't do this walk, I don't think it's going to go down too well with your Indonesian teachers. So you start the walk and there's like an elephant statue and you got to sit on it and take your photo because everybody does it. And then there's like bamboo and otters. If you can't see the otters, jangle your keys or jangle some car keys and they come running because, like Lloyd, they think you're a keeper. Then there's Sumatran tigers, so there's Indra's mum and Hutan, her brother. Then you keep going and then you enter the elephant village. And so there are 3 elephant enclosures which currently house 7 elephants. It was 8 until halfway end of last year. So the elephants in there, elephants live in herds if they're females and juvenile males, and males are solitary. So if you see one elephant by himself and you get to hear people say, "Oh my god, he's so lonely." No, he's not. He doesn't want to be with other elephants. And so that's Onga. He was the 2nd elephant born at Melbourne Zoo. Not as popular as his sister, the 1st elephant born at Melbourne Zoo. And he's Kulab's calf. So then you go to the herd and they're all girls, and then the little baby is actually 3 years old. And that is Manjai, and Manjai is hysterical to watch. So he has little tusks because, unlike Onga, he doesn't fight people for fun. But he loves a good log. He loves to climb on a log. He loves to try and move the logs that they have in the exhibit that he can't move because they're cemented to the ground. He just loves logs. And so he's full sibling to Marley. So Miss Marley is now 8 years old. And Marley was the first female elephant born in Australia, and the first elephant ever born at Melbourne Zoo. And when she was born, it was pandemonium. There were lines for 2 hours to go and see Marley. I stood in those. You might remember her. She was everywhere. They put 50 statues of her around the city. She was big. She was popular. And the zoo is actually planning and starting to work on Miss Marley having babies of her own. You guys also might be the last group to see Onga because he's a male. He'll actually move off to another zoo and he's going to Washington. But Marley will stay at Melbourne Zoo or wherever they send the herd. She'll stay with that herd for the rest of her life. So then you've got 4 fully grown adults. So you've got Dakun, that's Marley's mum. She has these really beautiful ears and golden freckles all over her face. And whenever the Buddhist monks come out, they say that she's the beautiful elephant. Kulab, we've heard about her a bit. I don't like Kulab. She's got a hairy head. She's Ongat's mum. She's mean. She wants the power. She wants to be the matriarch, but Mekapa's a matriarch. So you got Mekapa. She's gorgeous. She's the old girl. She's like 43. She lived in the old elephant exhibit and she just kind of plods along and she weaves. She's got this habit of weaving because she used to get stressed out being in a tiny exhibit. And so the keepers tried to break that. So they gave her food to distract her from weaving, but then she'd weave so she'd get food. So now it's just kind of like ingrained in her memory. And then you got Namoy, and Namoy's actually a pretty tragic elephant. Wow, I feel bad saying that. So when Namoy was born, she was actually taken away from her mum the day she was born to be a police officer's pet in Thailand. And this police officer had no idea what to feed poor Namoy. So he fed her sugarcane. And elephants actually require the nutrients in their mother's milk to help shape and maintain their internal organs. But Namoy didn't have that. Namoy had sugarcane. And so she looks like a bit of a beach ball. because her intestines didn't develop properly. It's not because she's fat, she's not overweight by any means, she just didn't develop and didn't grow properly. And so she looks that way. So when I was in the end of year 8, Namoy had her first calf, and it was a calf called Sanuk. He was adorable. He was like my 3rd favourite elephant. He was really cool. He's just hang out and plod along, and he loved playing with his toys. He actually got a tyre hung around his neck in a freak accident and choked himself to death on my last day of year 9, and I bawled my eyes out over this. So Namoy lost her first calf. She then fell pregnant with her second calf, who was born in 2016. Her name was Willow. You might remember Willow. Willow was born with a condition called complex carpal flexure. So say your foot's meant to go like that, hers went backwards like that. So she couldn't stand up. So it was unheard of in elephants. It had never happened before. And so the keepers put splints on her legs to kind of straighten the ankles out because they hadn't ossified yet because she was still a baby. But she couldn't stand up, so she couldn't reach Namoy to have her milk. And so the keepers actually managed to straighten her legs, but by the time she could stand up to get milk from Namoy, she'd been missing out too much, and she'd been on like fake elephant milk for too long, and she didn't have the nutrients, the immune system she needed, and she passed away about 2 weeks later because she caught an infection. So that was really sad, but Willow brought up so many ethical debates for the zoo. They were, arguing it every day. When is enough? When do we put this elephant to sleep? Because she's in pain. And the other argument that she was lucky she was born at Melbourne Zoo, because Melbourne Zoo don't really care what their animals look like. But other zoos, if an animal's a surplus animal, say Copenhagen Zoo, they breed baby giraffes because baby giraffes bring customers to come to the zoo. But then when they go old, people don't come to see them anymore, so they euthanize them. Melbourne Zoo, she would have had a limp for her life. What if she had have been born at another zoo? I mean, she didn't survive anyway, but hypothetically, she was lucky. And she was lucky to get the treatment she did in Australia rather than just, dying in the wild. But poor Namoy has lost both her calves, and she is the best mother out of the group, hands down. She raised Marley, Onga, and Manchai. So unfortunately, you won't be seeing Bongsu. Bongsu was the biggest animal in Australia. He had these massive tusks. He was a male, and they used to have to cut the ends off so he didn't get them stuck in fences, and they had to declare that to customs because you can't import ivory. Funnily enough, you can still sell ivory products. There's a loophole, but the zoo had to report it to customs, and customs had to dispose of it, which I think is hilarious. But because he was kept in a tiny enclosure with Mecapa, he actually developed chronic arthritis, and you used to see him standing on one foot all the time. It looks like he was posing for photos. But eventually last year it got way too much for him, and the zoo put him down at the age of 40. So elephants are meant to live to 60, so the zoo got a lot of backlash for doing this, and for their actions. I personally think it was the right thing. I don't think making him suffer anymore was necessary, but I don't think keeping the elephants in a tiny enclosure was the right thing either. I think that the elephants will do much better when they're moved out to Werribee Zoo in the next couple of years. And so the plan is to move all of them out there, from what I know, except Onga, because he's going to Washington. So then you continue along the walk, and there's the orangutans. And there is 6 orangutans in there. So there is Malu, and most orangutans are as smart as a 10-year-old. Malu's clocked in as smart as a 12-year-old. He is insane. No other zoo will take Malu because he's way too smart. He plays the Xbox. What else does Malu do? Oh, Malu grabs possums that are in the exhibit and walks them by their tail like they are a dog in front of visitors. Not because he wants to, hurt them, because he knows that it'll get the keepers and then it'll get food. He breaks bits of the enclosure, but he breaks it into about 15 pieces instead of leaving in just the one he's broken it. Then he puts one hand under and offers the keeper one piece, holds onto it until they put exactly what he wants in his hand, takes it, and then he will do the same for the next piece, and the next piece, and the next piece. He's worked out how to get 15 rewards out of one system. So he's in there. He hangs out with 2 gorillas. They're two orangutans, called Gabby and Kiani. So Kiani was actually a twin, which is super rare, and she's half Sumatra orangutan, half Bornean orangutan, which they worked out, we're not meant to be doing that. So they put her on the contraceptive pill to stop her from breeding because it wasn't great for genetics to have a half and half orangutan. But Kiani didn't actually like being on the contraceptive pill, so she'd put it in her mouth, and when the keepers weren't looking, she'd feed it to Santan, the male, and being a male, it didn't really do anything. And her and Santan had this Romeo-Juliet thing going on. They wanted to be together, but they couldn't be. So they used to do it through the bars with the enclosure, and she ended up pregnant with Gabby because she wasn't taking her pill. So Gabby's a miracle wonder baby that shouldn't be with us. So they all hang out with Marley now. And Marley's Gabby's half-brother. But it's really interesting because they know not to breed, just because they know, like, genetics and stuff. And then in the other enclosure, you have Santan and you have May. So they're Marley's full parents. And you have Dewi, who's nearly 8 as well, actually. So all these animals were born in the same year. Dewi is still quite small. She's adorable to watch. She is so much fun. And so you'll all know by now, doing Indonesian, that the big threat for orangutans and elephants is palm oil. But I actually want to talk about an animal that's at the back of the zoo, not on this walk, and the fact that it's threatened by palm oil. And so it's called a tapir. When I was in Year 7, we had a vote of the world's ugliest animals, and it was named number 1 by Year 7 Clover. So it has like a half a trunk on the front of its nose, and it looks like a cow. And these tapirs actually live in Malaysia and Sumatra as well, like these other animals, but you don't hear about them as much. And so not only do they lose their habitat to palm oil, but they're not as valued as an elephant or orangutan. If you have one of those on a plantation or on the road, you stop, you put it in a cage, and then you sell it on the black market. So at least it still gets to live. Tapirs are just like, I don't know, probably a rabbit, except they're not introduced. You see one on the road, people just hit them, the trucks just hit them and keep going. So not only do they have the threat of palm oil, but they've also got the threat of the trucks that just kind of bowl them over and keep going and leave them for dead. I just think it's really cool and really interesting that we don't actually talk about the effect on tapirs of palm oil. And so you all know how to fix palm oil as well, label palm oil, but it's not labelled in Australia yet. And Victoria is the only state that's like, yeah, we want to label palm oil. So the thing you can do is you can write to palm oil companies, write to Parliament and say, we want palm oil labelled, and I'm sure you'll get an A+++ if you do that for your Indo assignment. And the other thing you can do is the zoo has this thing called the Supermarket. It's got like scanners, and it's got an online version as well. And you click into the product, and it says whether the company uses sustainable palm oil, that's a good palm oil, or unsustainable palm oil. And if it uses unsustainable palm oil, you can write to them and get it to change. It's these simple choices we can make as consumers that can help save these animals, because orangutans are meant to be extinct by the time you guys finish high school. Like, that's ridiculous. Okay, I think that pretty much sums up my chat today about the zoo. Usually now we do questions, but I'm not here for questions. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to drop over there my email and my Instagram, because my Instagram's my environmental following thing. So you guys can have a look at that, and then if you got any questions, ask me that way, and I will get back to you. I pinky swear. But don't forget the zoo. Don't rush it. Just take your time. Don't try and see all the animals. I reckon just see the couple of walks that I've told you, unless you're super passionate about birds. Oh, and make time for the tapir. But yeah, that's pretty much all my cool stories. I mean, I have a million more, but you'd get stuck listening to me all day. And I mean, it's great to get out of one Indonesian lesson, but you probably wouldn't want to get out of all of them. So yeah, that's it from me, but thank you so much for listening, guys.